Okay guys, this is just going to be like a guide for your test corrections if you took the green version test. If you took the blue one, go to the other video. Before I start going through all these problems though, let's talk about how to use the test correction paper. Read the instructions, okay? Step 1, write a sentence explaining what you did wrong the first time. Step 2, resolve, there's supposed to be a dash there, the problem, showing your work and all the details. Step C, write one sentence explaining your new solution. So, let me show an example. So pretend that this part right here is on my test paper, okay? I missed number 4. And the blue is the work I did on the test paper. So I had this equation, I tried to divide by 3, and I divided that by 3, but I messed up here and left the 9 without dividing it, and got the wrong answer. So on my test correction paper, this white paper here, this is what I'm going to do to fix what I did wrong on my test paper. First, part A, what did I do wrong? On the first step, I forgot to divide the 9 by 3. Nice, short, sweet, what I missed, where I messed up on the first time. B, resolve it, show your work and the details. So, you gotta first show your work, solving it correctly, and write your final answer. Make sure you get both, the work, the answer. Don't just write the answer, don't just write the work, but not write the final step. Okay, then part C, write one sentence explaining your new solution. So I said I divided the whole left side of the equation by 3 and the whole right side of the equation by 3, then simplified to find x. Okay, nice and sweet. Don't forget to do your sentences. If you didn't try because you blanked when you were taking the test or just didn't know it yet, then part A, you can write, I didn't know how to do it. I skipped that problem, whatever. But part C, you've still got to write. It doesn't matter if you skipped the problem on the original test. This is explaining what you're doing here. Okay, it's explaining why did I do this stuff here? What was I doing to get the answer? So part C should be the same no matter what. Part A is going to depend on what you did on the original test or didn't do. Don't forget this last part. When you're finished, staple this paper with your corrections for all the ones you missed on front of your regular test paper. Don't just turn it in by itself. Staple them together, turn it in. And make sure to do it by Thursday is the last day we have class this week. I guess you might be able to turn it on Friday, but you'll probably forget. So just finish it and bring it back to class on Thursday. Okay, and staple it. If you don't have a staple, you can do the little tear fold thing if you want. But turn them both in together. Okay, anyway, let's get started so we can get through this here, hopefully under half an hour for this video. But obviously the questions you got right, you can skip that part of the video because you don't need to do test corrections on those problems. Just fast forward or skip whatever and watch the problems that you need help with to know what you need to do on the test corrections. Okay, problem number 1. You got a bunch of things multiplied together and we're going to use the product property. First thing I'm going to do here is rearrange the order of these factors is the technical word, but this is -5 times m cubed times 3 times m squared times m squared. It's all multiplication. For multiplication, the order doesn't matter. So I'm going to take, let me use orange here, the -5 and the 3 and put them at the beginning. And then I'm going to put all the m's together after that. So m cubed, m squared, m squared. Put them there. So times m cubed times m squared times m squared. Okay, -5 times -3. So that equals -5 times -3 equals -15. M cubed times m squared times m squared. That's the product property. Add the exponents. 3 plus 2 plus 2 is 7. So it's -15 times m to the 7th power. And just super quick review on the product property in case you forgot. M cubed is m times m times m. M squared is m times m. M squared is m times m. It's all multiplied together, so total of 7 m's multiplied together, which would be m to the 7th. So that's just zooming in on how the product property works. But you can just use that. You should know it without having to write it out the long way. But when in doubt, write it out the long way so you make sure you're doing it right. Okay, this one, we're going to have to use the quotient property. I'm going to show you actually 2 ways on this one, 2 ways to do it. Okay, first way is we're just going to straight out apply the quotient property, and we have to first remember that is k to the first. Let me write that a little better. K, if there's no exponent on something, it's the first power, not the 0 power, the first power, because there's one of them. So k to the third over k to the first, you, according to the quotient property, subtract the exponents. So leave the 2 and the -3 for a second. 3 minus 1 is 2. So that would be k squared. So 2k squared over -3. And that's really all you can do, because 2 and 3 are not the same number, so they won't be able to divide or anything. So it'll be 2k squared over 3 negative. If you leave the negative on the bottom, that's fine. If you write the negative on the top, that's fine. Doesn't matter. Okay, the other way to think about it, if you write it out the long way, it's 2 times k times k times k over -3 times k. One of those pairs of k's will divide out, leaving k squared on the top, which is what you have. Okay, on this one, slightly more tricky. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to show it both those ways too. So this one, -5 divided by -5. That can divide, because -5 divided by -5 is the same as 1 over 1. So we got 1a over 1a cubed. Now that's a to the first, like we talked about a second ago. And we're going to subtract the exponents, just like we did on number 2. So it's 1a to the 1 minus 3. 1 minus 3 is -2. You subtract the top exponent minus the bottom exponent. And so you're left with this. 1a to the -2 over 1. And a to the -2 means flip it to the bottom. On the bottom, it's going to be a to the positive 2. And there's this one's there. We don't need to write the 1 on the bottom now. So 1 over a squared. So I was writing these extra 1s everywhere just to kind of keep it as a fraction and kind of see how this is going on. Because at the end, remember, it's not a squared, it's 1 over a squared. Two different things. Okay, pretend a is 2 for a second. A squared would be 4. 1 over a squared would be 1/4. So if right here, let's say I wasn't writing those 1s. It was just a to the negative 2. So then I say, okay, I flip it. So it's 1 over a squared. Some people get confused and they're not sure what to do. If there's nothing on the top of the fraction, just write a 1. Okay? Just write a 1. If that's confusing why you do that, then ask me about it, please. Well, actually, over here, I'm going to show you the other way. Maybe that will make it a little clearer. So to write it out the long way, -5 times a over -5 times a times a times a. -5 divided by -5, those will go away, 1 over 1, so we're just left with a over a times a times a. A divided by a is 1. It's not 0. It disappears, magically cancels. A divided by a equals 1. If a is 279, then you have 279 divided by 279. Why did I say that number? Doesn't matter. A could be anything. We don't know. Let's say it's 4. 4 divided by 4. It's 1. So you're left with a squared on the bottom. What do you write on the top? You write a 1. You write a 1. Okay. Hopefully that makes a little more sense if you were confused on when you get a negative exponent or when the extras left are on the bottom. Number 4. On your paper, you don't need to show both ways. Just one or the other is fine. Number 4. Before I deal with the top, I'm just going to simplify the bottom. 4 times 2 is, well, let me write it in order just for the heck of it. Okay, 4 times 2 is 8. X times x is x squared. So we have x to the third over 8x squared. Subtract the exponents, and x to the 1 over 8, which you could just write as, I'll write it down here, x over 8. Okay. Good, good. Go to number 5. Yay. Power of a power, multiply the powers, but you have to multiply the powers of all the factors on the inside of this parentheses. The squared is not just on the x cubed, it's on this whole thing. That's -4 to the first. So, -4 to the first, going to multiply the power, multiply the power. That's what the power of a power property says. If you don't remember the power of a power property, go review it. Look at your little flip chart thing that you made. So we got -4 squared times x cubed squared. Power of a power says multiply, so this is going to become x to the 6th. -4 squared. -4 times -4 would be positive 16. Or if you want, you could write positive 4 squared x to the 6th. Either one of those is fine. But since it's squared, the negative is going to cancel out negative times negative, and so you don't want to have that negative in your answer. Okay, number 6. Is the negative going to cancel or no? Well, I'll answer it, then I'll show you the long way, and so you can understand how that works. Because it's -n squared cubed, it's going to become -n to the 6th. Why is it still negative, even though there's you're exponenting it and stuff like that? Well, because you have -n squared times -n squared times -n squared. 3 of them because it's to the third power. That's what the third power means. Which, let's write it out even longer. The negatives, I'm going to move over here. -1 times -1 times -1 times n squared is n times n. N squared is n times n. N squared is n times n. Okay, negative times negative times negative. 2 of the negatives multiply together to be a positive 1. And there's 1 negative left. So that's where the negative comes from. Hopefully that's helpful. You pause and look at that a little closer for a second. Think about it if you were confused on that one. Okay. This one I'm going to show 2 ways. Okay, first way, the long way. Let's say, look, all these pieces that are multiplied together here, 2 times p times 3 times p, they're all to the first power. And I'm going to well, I'm going to use the power of a power property for each of those factors. So that 2 will multiply all those 1s. So it'll be 2 squared times p squared times 3 squared times p squared. And put the multiplication, the order doesn't matter, so I'm going to put these at the front and the p's right here. P squared times p squared is p to the 4th with the product property. And I'll just leave this as 2 squared times 3 squared. And that's good, I guess, for now. Okay. The other way, what if we take the inside here and simplify the inside first before applying this power on the outside of the parentheses? 2 times 3 would be 6, and p times p would be p squared. Hopefully you don't mind me doing that without rewriting the inside first. But you can move the 3 over with the 2 and the p over with the p, just like we kind of did on that step. Anyway, 6, that's really 6 to the 1st. Now we're going to do this and say 6 to the 1st squared is 6 squared. P squared squared is p to the 4th. And 6 squared is, so we could stop here, or we could say 6 squared is 36 p to the 4th. Wait a second, are these the same as that? Yes, they are. If you want a proof of that, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 9 is 36. So either way, you get the same thing. You could write this or that or that. Anyway, either way of those is fine. Okay, let's go to number 8. Okay, don't try to multiply this 2 with this 2 before you take care of this power, because this is not a -2, it's a -2 to the 3rd. Okay, don't show respect to these parentheses here, okay? Do show respect to parentheses. Show them the respect they deserve. Okay, so the 2y we're going to leave alone for a second, and we're going to just go like this. Power of a power property, that's going to be, okay, that's -2 to the 1st, that's going to become -2 to the 3rd. Y to the 3rd is going to become y to the 9. Okay, so we got 2 times y times -2 to the 3rd would be -8. If you're not sure why, go off to the side and multiply -2 times -2 times -2 and figure that out. It's not 6, it's not -6, it's not +8, it's -8. Make sure you know why. Okay, and then y to the 9th. Now I'm going to multiply the numbers at the beginning. This y, I'm going to write as y to the 1st, just so you can know it's y to the 10th right here. And -2 times -2 times -8 is -16. Should have not written the 1 and talked about it before I added it. Anyway, y with no power is y to the first. Add those, you get 10. Or you have 9 y's multiplied together, 1 y, and so total 10 y's multiplied together in there. Okay, let's move on to number 9. Number 9. And number 9, first, before anything, oh, there's a x to the 0. If there's a 0 power, it just equals 1. X to the 0 is 1. So really that's times 2 times 1 times y to the negative 3. Okay, so now I'm going to write the two numbers at the front, negative 3 times 2. I'm going to cross those off since I got them down here. Then I'm going to write the x squared. Now I'm going to write the y's times y to the 4th times y to the negative 3. So put all the like things together. The y's together, the numbers together. There's only one x factor in there. So negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. X squared is the only x piece in there. Okay, what am I going to do? It's the product property, just as usual. 4 plus negative 3. What's that? 1. That's it. Negative 6 x squared y. And if you wrote negative 6y x squared, that's okay. I just like them in alphabetical order. Number 10. Okay, 2 ways to do this. First and easiest way is just to say, oh look, it's a thing. It's a thing to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. It's a thing to the 0 power, therefore it equals 1. Yeah. Okay, if you didn't think of that, then maybe you did it this way. Power of a power property, so negative 7 is to the first, and do that to the 0 power, now it's negative 7 to the 0. X to the 5th to the 0 will be x to the 0. Negative 7 to the 0 is what? 1. X to the 0 is what? 1. 1 times 1 is what? 1. Easy. Just got to remember your properties. Okay, this one, remember that negative 3 is to the first power. I'm going to power of a power property, so it's going to be a negative 3 to the negative 2 times b to the negative 4. Negative 3 to the negative 2. That's going to be 1 over negative 3 to the 2. B to the negative 4 is going to be 1 over b to the 4. Okay, remember, flip the fraction when you have a negative exponent. Negative 3 times negative 3 is what? 9. So 1 over 9 b to the 4th. Or if you wanted to write it as 1 over 3 squared b to the 4th, that's fine too. But since the negative times negative will make it go away because it's squared, you should probably not write it like this since the negative is not necessary. Okay, this one. 4 over 2 is just 2. Or you could write 2 over 1 if you really want. X squared over x to the first will be x. 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, and so we 4 divided by 2 became the 2. X squared over x first become x to the first on the top. Y to the negative 3. If it's negative, if the exponent is negative on the bottom, it's going to go to the top. So it will be y to the positive 3. And there's nothing left on the bottom, so it's divided by 1. So it's just 2x y cubed. Almost done. Okay, this guy right here, I want you to notice what can simplify really easily right away. Okay, there's a couple things you might have thought of, but look at all these x to the zeros. It's 2 times x cubed times y to the 0 times x to the 0 times y to the third. What's y to the 0? It's 1. What's x to the 0? It's 1. So what's x to the 0 down here? It's 1. So really, all you have is 2 times x to the negative 3 times 1 times y to the third over 1 times y to the fourth, which is just y to the fourth, all to the negative third power. What am I going to do with that? There's a couple ways you could do it. You could, that's to the first, you could multiply negative 3 times all these powers on the inside here, or we could just simplify the inside first of this parentheses as much as we can, then do that, which I think that's what I'm going to do for you here. It will work the same either way though. 2 to the first is just 2. X to the negative 3 will go down to the bottom and become x to the positive 3. Y to the 3 over x to the 4. Oh, y to the 3 over y to the fourth. 3 minus 1 is what? Negative 1. Three minus 1. Top power minus bottom power, because they're both y to a power. Okay, one more thing before we use that negative 3. The y to the negative 1 will become just a y to the 1 on the bottom. X cubed y to the first. And I'm going to put a first power on the 2 just so we don't forget it when we use the power of a power property. Okay, all the factors involved need to get the power of a power property, get that negative 3 multiplied by them. So we're going to have 2 to the negative 3 over x to the negative 9 y to the negative 3. Since they're all negative now, we're going to flip them. If it's on the top, goes to the bottom. On the bottom, goes to the top. Or maybe I should be saying numerator and denominator. Numerator becomes the denominator, except it's not a negative exponent anymore. And vice versa. There you go. Okay, last question. 4 times what is 12? 3. 12 times what is 36? 3. 36 times what is 108? 3. Times 3, times 3, times 3. So that is a ratio because it's multiplying every time. The ratio equals 3. If you put r equals 3, that's fine. Or if you just put 3. Find the next 3 numbers. Well, what is 108 times 3? And what is whatever that is times 3? And what is whatever that is times 3? Times 3. That's where you want to use your calculator. So 108 times 3. Actually, I can do that one in my head. It's 324. And yeah, let me grab my calculator here real quick. 108 times 3. I'll just double check that real fast. 324 times 3, enter, 972. And enter again, 2,916. So it's 324, 972, and 2,916. Hooray! 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 Okay, explicit equation. That's where notes come in handy, because I let you make notes in advance for this test, so you only have to blame yourself. The equation for the nth term is the first term times the ratio to the power of n minus 1. So if you had that in your notes, all you have to do is say, oh, the ratio's 3. And the first number is 4. And wow, that's the equation. Okay, so hopefully you had that in your notes. You could just get that really easy. The only tricky part about it is the n minus 1. It's not to the n, it's to the n minus 1. You start with a 4, start number 4, that's pretty straightforward. And then you multiply by 3 a bunch of times. How many? Well, to get a 4, you can use your calculator and test this equation you got. 4 times 3 to the first, that would give you 12. Not 4. So you have to subtract 1. So 4 times 3 to the 0 is 4. 4 times 3 to the first is 12. So that's for n equals 2. N equals 2, n equals 3, n equals 4, n equals 5, n equals 6, n equals 7. So how you can test this, put in your calculator 4 times 3 to the 6th power and see if it gets you that 7th number in the sequence. And it should work. That's how you could have tested your answer to make sure you were on the right track. Okay, that's the video. If you have any other questions, I guess you could email me, whatever. And make sure to finish your test corrections by Thursday and turn them in on Thursday. You could turn them in to me on Friday, but we don't have class on Friday, so plan to turn them in on Thursday, because you'll probably forget if you plan to turn them on Friday. And blah, 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 blah. Have a nice day.